Jason Longshore, hanging out with us to discuss Toronto and Atlanta. How long do we have you this morning, first and foremost?
About 20.
Okay, so we'll
first off, I have to ask Jarrett, were you describing a soccer match or were you describing a college party with your last assessment?
It's DC and Montreal.
I mean, it could be either. Just checking. You could have taken that and you would have been describing like house party or something.
What they're going to do might not be soccer. Although, hey, this one might be one to watch anyway, just even if you are not a sicko like myself. This one might be fun to watch anyway, because if Montreal wins, you're going to want to hear whatever Hernan Losada has to say after the game.
You're going to want to make sure you got the notifications on his Instagram account for sure.
He has his own Instagram account that he's regularly posting things on?
We've talked about this before, yes.
Okay. All right. Obviously it slipped my mind, but what else is new?
He's going to cut a promo probably. And
he has been a little salty occasionally with some comments and captions on Instagram.
Okay. I'll have to follow him on Instagram now. All right. So now that you're here, we can talk about Atlanta and Toronto. I guess first question is what's it been like up there at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta training ground from your observations this week?
I mean, it's been training, it hasn't really looked like a team that is going to be missing its 6 due to a red card or its goalkeeper for 10 to 12 weeks due to an incident that should have been handled differently by the referees. I don't know if any of that's going to get talked about this week by Pro or in the definitive angle or any of their videos. I've heard that, and Doug Robertson mentioned it yesterday at media. He asked Gonzalo Pineda about it, that the Ibarra Sands one is going to be talked about, and I would assume the video, because, I mean, it's a big incident where it was given a yellow one way on the field and it's given a red the other way. I've said it all week long, like, you can justify the red card. If you appeal, you're not getting that back. Like, you can find justification for the red card there. That's not hard. It's a really weird play in the sense that the initial collision is given a yellow card one way, but when you look at the replay, it goes red the other way. And really the only difference is who got who. And it's not even that Sands played the ball first. He accidentally touched it first because he jumps in and catches it with his plant foot. It's like the blooper that you would see when somebody's going to jump in to shoot and they hit the ball off their plant foot and they swing and they fall down. In this case, they collided with somebody who helped them fall down, but that's why the ball wasn't there. It wasn't that Sands touched it away to go get it or anything like that. You have to take the full context into consideration when you're talking about this. Red card to Ibarra, look, you can give the red card there. That's completely fine. The way the play was handled is the issue. And in the context of the 90 minutes, when Brad Gazan gets hit back-to-back weeks and he gets hit and injured in this and amazingly finished the game, it's frustrating. So, I mean, this week at training, you didn't see any of that. You saw a team preparing for the next game. And I think what that says is the leadership in this group is strong. The culture around this group is strong. Gonzalo Pineda has a really good grip on this team. And I think the team leadership internally, even without Brad on the field, is good. He was there. He was around at the beginning of training on Thursday. He was in the building on Tuesday. I spoke to Grady Jarrett, who was hanging out at the building as well from the Falcons. So his presence will be there. This is not the same situation as last year where, he had a surgery and he was away more, even though he was still around a good bit. He's going to be more involved in the day-to-day at the facility. Just won't be on the pitch during games, and Quentin Westberg will be taking his place this week.
Jarrett, go for it.
I'm glad you bring up the, being in the video review. We talked about earlier this week that, you're not going to, don't appeal this. You only have so many appeals.
No, it's not worth it.
You're not getting it overturned. Yeah. I wanted to see it go on video, not because of like a gotcha or anything. I want to hear what the process is. I like when they do this sometimes and give us the what's the process between the VAR and the official? What's the conversation like? And I like that they kind of pull the curtain back on that sometimes. So hopefully they'll do that.
Yeah, for sure. I hope so. Because look, it's a difficult one. And I thought Christina Uncle had a really good point on I think it was 360, but it might have been on the wrap up show, where it's one where the referee's really close to the play. It's a bang bang play. It's a series of bang bang plays in the midfield where the ball keeps getting back and forth, and the referee's right there. But when you're so close, and I don't think there was anything he could really do to be further away. I think it's just the nature of the play. You don't get the full context when you're that close. Like you're right up against it. And I don't know if he saw, I'm assuming he didn't see the ball come off of Sands' left foot. And that's why he called it one way initially. And then you look at it, it's anytime you go in for a challenge strong, you're running the risk. And anytime you don't get to the ball and you go in for a challenge, you're running a risk of a card. And whether that's yellow, red, it depends. So that's the nature of the job. That's the nature of that position. It's the nature of playing in the way that Franco Ibarra does. And the thing that I do not want to see happen is the narrative flip, which is very unfair. Franco Ibarra and his physicality has been a huge asset for Atlanta United in 2023. And just because he is late to a ball that Sands misplayed doesn't mean that his physicality is an issue. And that needs to not flip. That narrative, that cannot change.
Jared, go for it. If you had a follow-up, go for it. No, I guess he doesn't. I guess not. So now that we know Quentin Westberg is.
Oh, now he does.
Okay, go for it, Jared. What's on your mind?
Oh, what? Yeah. So the game's actually in Toronto this time. Do you think Toronto actually wants to play this time?
It depends on kind of where they are because they've had a bunch of injuries. They don't have Adama Diomande. He's listed as out again. Lorenzo Insigne is upgraded to questionable. I can't see him starting. Can he play? Potentially, but going up to questionable, and we have not heard from Bob Bradley yet. I'm guessing they're doing their pre-match media today, unless they did it yesterday and didn't post anything. Or nobody covered it because I haven't seen anybody talking about it either. So, they're kind of stuck. And credit to Bob Bradley, Jarrett, because we talked about it last year and we talked about it kind of towards the end of LAFC where it felt like they plateaued a little bit. Bob got stubborn there for a while in the idea that he wanted to play his way and he was not going to deviate and he was going to be wide open and he did not care what you thought and he did not care what he had defensively to protect it. Well, this year, maybe that chip on his shoulder has finally disappeared from how he was treated at Swansea because I really feel like that's where it started. He's been a little more pragmatic and he's had to be because you've lost Insigne, you've lost Diomande. You haven't had much in the attack. You're really relying on Bernardeschi to pull rabbits out of the hat, and you've had to be more difficult to break down. Now they did, and Bob is the guy who's going out and getting these players as well. They did address the defense in the offseason. They brought in Matt Hedges. He is out due to concussion protocol this week. That's going to hurt them. They brought in Sean Johnson. They brought in Petretta, who I really like on the left side. This is a much better defensive team. But with the absences early in the season, he's had to be more pragmatic in terms of just being a difficult team to break down. And look, they haven't lost since the opener. They've only won one and they've drawn 5 times, but they haven't lost. And we can't criticize Bradley for being, I think, too wide open and too stubborn in terms of changing to get results, but then not give him credit for doing that in a situation where I think he's had to. They'll get better in the attacking end when he can get guys healthy and on the field, if that ever happens. But right now, they're having to grind a little bit, and they're difficult. I mean, it's a 4-3-3 that turns into a really narrow 4-2-2-2 defensively a lot of times. With Osorio tucking in, you've got Kay and Cervania who are really providing a lot of the running in that midfield, keeping Michael Bradley on the ball as your point person there. And again, you're asking Bernardeschi to make magic, and that's really all you got right now. So they're leaning into it, and they're just a a difficult team to break down. They haven't given up many goals. They're not scoring many goals, but they're getting some results. Now at home, does the pressure mount up that they have to get more than just a point? Yeah, I think it does, but I would also think that the fan base is understanding, and maybe the media base as well is understanding of the predicament that he's in without Insigne for this long of a period of time, and without Diamande. Akinola hasn't gotten the job done up top. We've seen DeAndre Kerr up top a decent bit, so he doesn't have a lot in the attack to work with at the moment. So he's getting what he can out of what he's got to work with, and it's a step in the right direction. It's just you got to eventually score more goals to win more games and be where Toronto expects to be.
With Quentin Westberg in net, how different is he vocally, stylistically than Brad? We know that Brad is that bombastic presence at the back. How different is Quentin when it comes to his communication and what their expectation is back there?
Quentin's vocal, he's not the same kind of vocal as Brad Gazan, because I don't know if anybody is. Brad is a different animal when it comes to being vocal and being a big presence. But Quentin has a presence. And when you play as long as he has, and you've done all the things in your career that Quentin Westberg has, this is not somebody who's been a career backup in MLS. And I don't know if that's been the perception. This is a guy who came up in the French footballing system. This is a guy who played for the U.S. at the U20 World Cup. He's got tons of experience. He's a very traveled, cultured guy. And I think he brings a different kind of feel to the position. He's not as big as Brad Gazan. Crosses, he's not going to be the same presence, but he's a great shot stopper, and he's very good with the ball at his feet. That's how he was brought up playing. So he was a little bit ahead of the curve in that way in terms of being a goalkeeper who would be involved in the buildup. So you're going to have no changes in that sense, in the sense that, let's say Toronto steps up with 2 and presses. They do go into that 4-2-2-2. And I don't think they're going to press super high, but they will defend with 2 up high with the forward and Bernardeschi, because they don't want him tracking back on the wing. Okay, that means Atlanta's going to have to build with 3. You can do that a variety of ways. That could be the 6 dropping in between, which is what we've seen at times, but honestly, not that much from Atlanta United in 2023. It could be one of the fullbacks tucking in to create 3 versus 2. But it could also be Quentin Westberg stepping up and being the third man, or creating a diamond at times to give you 4 versus 2. So you've got a lot of ways to play it with Westberg in terms of that side. You know, the question is just he hasn't played a competitive match of the season. So the question is sharpness. The question is what comes down to that. But I think he's a guy who has been in the situation. He gets it. He knows what he has to do to be ready for a match. This isn't someone who doesn't have that experience. He's got just so many years of living this life and being in this world that he'll know everything he needs to do to be ready to go in this game. And like he said this week when he spoke to the media, you know, it does kind of help him in some ways that his first game this season is in a place where he's completely and utterly comfortable, a building that he knows like the back of his hand at BMO Field. So, you know, different locker room, but I think Quentin Westberg, you won't have any kind of a drop off with him being in goal. He's just got to get his sharpness up, and you'd love for him to get a good save, not a super difficult save, but a good save early, get on the ball a little bit in the build-up, and just get comfortable as quickly as you can.
Jason's hanging out with us till the bottom of the hour. Jarrett, go for it.
And so, looking at the other side of that for Atlanta, for guys missing, no fucking about it in this one. How were you lining up that midfield, knowing? And I know we do this a lot when we have these conversations about, hey, do you adjust yourself for who you're facing, or do you trust who you are? Do you trust who you are? Is it just a like for like of Santiago Sosa drops in and maybe Mateus Soseto, if he's healthy and ready to go, slots in, and then you just go?
Well, I feel like if that's the idea, you're forgetting about how good Amar Sejdic has been. And Amar flies under the radar a lot of times, but he is someone who, in New York, we saw him flying into tackles. We saw him physical when he needed to be.
Created the first goal in Charlotte with it.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, that's anticipation side of it. I'm talking like getting stuck into tackles and being a physical presence, which is something that Ibarra has brought. It's tough. It's a tough decision because you've got a lot of different ways you can play it. We saw Hosechu play the 6 before. Do you want to have him there thinking you might dominate possession in this one? However, Toronto is a team that wants the ball as well. So do you need someone like Sosa, who is probably, and I don't think this is a clear-cut answer, but probably more accustomed to being the 6 and being defensive when needed, and being more of that, linchpin on the defensive side of the ball. You need to think about that, because I don't know if this is a game where you have 60% of the ball. I think it's a game where you can have the ball, because I don't think Toronto is going to step up high, and I think Atlanta can dictate that. But is that Sosa? Is that Hosetsu sitting deep? I think Sejdic keeps his spot. I think Sejdic stays as the 8. The other question, Thiago Almada trained yesterday. Almada did have a knock late in that NYC game. Don't believe there were any issues yesterday, but he didn't train on Tuesday. So there's always that lingering, like, is he maybe limited in terms of minutes? I would think he'd be available to start from everything that we've seen. I didn't notice any issues with him moving around yesterday. So that makes you feel pretty good, but you're going to be careful when it comes to Thiago Almada. So if you have to limit minutes for him, then okay, you have to plan for that. Johnny Fortune's name always comes up in the situation. He's someone who's going to continue to push for minutes. So you have a multitude of options in the middle of the park to replace Franco Ibarra. And for me, it comes down to, if you think you're going to be on the ball 55% plus, maybe more like 60% plus, can you get away with Hosetsu as the 6, Sejdic as the 8, Almada as the 10? Or do you feel like Toronto's going to have their spots and have their opportunities, and you need Sosa, who is the more defensive-minded, maybe the more comfortable in the position, to sit deeper, be able to help you in the build-up and drop between the center backs? That's something that's natural for him. Do you need that more? And that's what it comes down to for me. Hosetsu has played better in 2023 than Sosa. Sosa hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities to play. Had a huge play at Yankee Stadium, clearing one out of the 6-yard box. He's been better every time we've seen him, I think. The Columbus game, he was not good. He's been better every time we've seen him since that. But Hosetsu was really good till he got hurt. And then Sejdic came in and took the spot, and Sejdic hasn't given it up yet. So which way do you go? I think a lot of the things that we didn't see in training this week are probably going to determine that, and also how Gonzalo Pineda predicts in his mind and his staff how this game goes and what he needs out of that position in this match.
Go for it, Jared.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because I've been trying to drive this point home that as he comes back into it, as good as Sejdic has been, Hosetsu hadn't done anything to lose the starting spot before his injury. So yeah, I thought he had done exactly what I thought. He was kind of one of those guys for me this year. He needed to prove something, and I thought he had absolutely started that on the right foot. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy, and we'll see how they line it up. But I've been trying to drive it home that he hasn't done anything to lose a starting spot.
No, but neither has Sejdic since he got it. So
I know it's a good problem.
Yeah, it's a really good problem to have, and it is something that you got to manage minutes. You do have an Open Cup game coming up where you'll be able to maybe get some guys different minutes and figure that out. But yeah, it's tough. This is where the coaches really make their money, and the whole staff, because you've got to keep guys pushing forward. You've got to keep that competition strong. You want to reward players where you can for hard work and training, but you also got to put the best team on the field to win games. So that's all a balancing act, knowing that probably at some point this season, you're going to need Mateus Hosetsu to start a run of games. You're going to need Santiago Sosa to start a run of games. You're going to need those guys ready to go when the time comes, and they've got to be right physically, but they've also got to be right mentally too.
One non-Atlanta United question from Kefsey before we go over broadcast plans. I know it's another busy weekend. Kefsey wants to know if you think that Kai Kamara is going to catch Landon Donovan in career goals.
No, I don't think so. The question when it comes to Kai Kamara, it always gets to a point where things don't end well where he's at. And how long it takes for that to happen in Chicago it's in the back of your mind. Because, it happened in Montreal in preseason this year. It happened in Vancouver. Those are the last two that I remember specifically. I know there's been more situations with it. So can he maintain doing this long enough to get to that point? I don't think so. I think what he's doing and his game last week, amazing. At his age, just amazing. But for whatever reason, things always turn sour with Kai Kamara everywhere he's been in MLS. And Chicago has to be almost bracing themselves for it. Chicago, I mean, they were sitting on Kasper Shabilko, who just has not done anything there either since he arrived. And how all of that plays out with a team that is starting to invest in a training facility and the big picture when it comes to the Chicago Fire, I don't know how long Kai Kamara is part of that big picture to get to that point, to get to Landon Donovan's record. I don't think it happens.
All right, broadcast plans, another very busy weekend for not just the first team, but the twos as well.
Yeah, 7 o'clock Saturday night, Five Stripes Countdown, 92.9 The Game, the Odyssey app, SiriusXM FC as well. They're picking up our feed out of Toronto for this one. Kickoff 7:39. Five Stripes Countdown will follow the final whistle. It will be a little abbreviated so we can hop on a plane, get back to Atlanta, and then Sunday, John, you can tell everybody about Atlanta United 2.
Atlanta United 2 and OCB, and it's going to be up at the Fraction. Pre-game show 15 minutes ahead of kick. Jason will have the call. I'll be there for pre, half, and post. Jared hopefully will be there for pre, half, and post as well. And
maybe, possibly, who knows?
Perhaps. So it'll be a full weekend for us here at SDH with Jason on the first team, Jason on the second team, SDH on the second team. So start that weekend and get out of here and get up there safe and come back home safe and have a good call.
Yep.